Stormgate is a real-time strategy game, also referred to as an RTS, in development by Frost Giant Studios, which itself was founded by former developers and engineers at Blizzard with a history of RTS games, notably StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3. This video will serve as an overview of common terminology and jargon you are likely to hear when watching videos about the game or while watching tournaments. So without further ado, let's get cracking on some of the most common terms that you need to know about Stormgate. The meta. When a person refers to the meta, they are commonly referencing the current and most popular strategies, tactics, and builds that a player uses to gain an advantage over their opponent. Note that I said current in that definition. This means that the meta is constantly evolving, moving, reshaping, and changing as strategies are developed and refined. Now maybe this is a bit basic, but I have a few words here that we can use to further define how we understand the meta. Strategy, tactics, and a build. Strategies are a game plan that uses a build and tactics to gain an advantage over your opponent so that you can win the game. A build refers to the timing and organization of the units, structures, and upgrades that you, quote, build in a particular order to accomplish your strategy. Your build refers to the roadmap or plan, meaning the timing of your buildings, construction, and your upgrades, while the actions needed to execute that build are commonly referred to as macro, which we will get to here shortly. Now I've introduced two terms here that we are going to talk about. First is macro, the second is micro. Macro is short for macro management. As I just mentioned, macro refers to the actions you take in-game to produce units, construct buildings, manage your army supply, and manipulate your economy. In Stormgate, macro commonly happens in what is called a macro cycle. This cycle has 4 core steps that are cycled through constantly in your brain. While pros have these cycles built into their habits, new players must actively and deliberately practice them to ingrain those habits over time. Macro is the most important part of the game in almost every strategy. Without macro, you cannot build units on time, you cannot execute sharp timings, and you cannot efficiently expand to build a more robust economy. A common macro cycle for every player to work on takes only 4 steps. Although more steps may be added as you become better at multitasking and efficiently executing your cycle, the current 4 steps you should work on are as follows. 1. Check your supply. 2. Check your money. 3. Check your worker production. And 4. Check your army production. With each check, you are aiming to identify if there is something you need to do. By first checking your supply, you will know how close to your army cap you are, and if you need to build a supply structure or not. After checking your supply, you want to check your money, which in Stormgate are Luminite and Therium. Luminite is used for basic structures and units. Therium is used to construct more advanced structures and units, and this is commonly referred to as your tech. Now that you've checked your supply and your money, you know if you need to build a supply structure and if you have the money to do so. If, however, your supply is satisfied, you can then check your worker production and build workers. And then you check your army production to build army. In an ideal world, production of units happens at the last moment before a currently queued unit is produced. This goes for both worker production and army production. The reason for this is that when you queue up a unit for production, you are immediately spending the money needed to produce it. So by queuing up 5 units, for example, it will tie up those funds into those units and you cannot spend them on something else. To use an in-game example, if we queue up 4 Lancers here in this barracks, that is the equivalent of 400 Luminite. You know what also costs 400 Luminite? A command post that would allow you to expand. So while it is okay to queue up units at times, you should always strive to queue them up at the last moment to maximize the efficiency of your money, because it could mean you have another opportunity to build a production structure and be more efficient. Now let's talk a little bit more about the economy. The economy is a really important concept to understand at all levels of play and becomes really important at the highest levels of play. Killing a base, for example, will reduce your opponent's income. This is a common tactic and strategy, and it can mean that you produce more than they can because you have more money. This gives you an advantage over time. The other element of the economy relates to the balance being placed on Luminite and Therium. When scouting an opponent, you should always take note of the distribution of their workers to understand their strategy by noticing their economic tactics for mining resources. Other things to look for when you are scouting are the number of army structures that are producing, the number of worker structures that are producing, the upgrade structures that are producing, and you may even want to take note of their expansions, or the lack thereof. Now, earlier I said that there were two big terms that you're going to hear a lot of, which are macro and micro. Now we're going to talk about micro, which is short for micromanagement. It refers to the management of individual units or groups of units on the map. These can be for tactical reasons, for management of the economy by redistributing workers between Therium and Luminite patches, or perhaps even for some really cool and fancy plays. Here are some of the absolute basics you should know. I'll go over some of the more advanced micro mechanics in another video. A-move. A-moving is probably the most common micro action that a player takes throughout a game, second only to the move command. A-move refers to the attack command, which also moves a unit. Conveniently, the hotkey for attacking is the letter A by default, which also fits the term. Patrol. Patrolling allows you to set a point or a series of points for a unit to move between repeatedly until you stop that action with an A-move, a move command, a stop command, or any other micromanagement action. Stay tuned for a future video on how you can create that series of points that I referenced, as this mechanic and technique is used constantly by the best players in the game. It is called shift queuing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was useful. I have been a huge fan of StarCraft for over a decade now. I got into it by watching Day9, who had a similar series of educational videos on his channel back in 2011, 2010, and I really wanted to pay that forward and bring that style of education to the next generation of RTS players. So if you like this video, if you found it useful, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting the subscribe button down below. I'd love to make more of these videos and also review some replays of professionals so that I can teach you how to learn builds, develop cool tactics, and more. We'll see you next time.